Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your sources and try to uncover the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're embarking on an exploration into, well, a really fundamental human experience, that deep, sometimes hard to express longing for meaning, for connection. We're calling it the fiery heart. It's really a journey, tracing a path from restlessness to a kind of inner peace, a path we find talk about across so many diverse traditions. And to really set the stage, we're holding up a guiding light from, honestly, one of history's most iconic spiritual autobiographies, St. Augustine's Confessions. You know the famous line, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." That one sentence from centuries ago, it just perfectly captures the whole arc of our deep dive today, doesn't it?
It really does. That cry from Augustine, that deep human recognition of a kind of spiritual ache, it just resonates, across cultures, across millennia. And while, sure, many might link this fiery heart to specific figures or maybe particular religions, what's truly fascinating is how universally this longing is expressed.
Hmm.
Our deep dive today, well, it draws from an incredibly rich array of sources. I mean, everything from ancient Eastern scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita and the Dhammapada to so say, the deep thoughts of Sufi poets, the insights of Christian mystics, think St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, and even modern psychological texts, things like The Untethered Soul or Man's Search for Meaning. So we're going to try and connect these seemingly disparate dots, show you how these profound insights actually offer a kind of shared map for navigating the human spirit's quest for transformation, for grace. It's like Augustine's sentiment echoes everywhere in all these different wisdom traditions. Our mission is really to distill these perspectives, help you grasp the core patterns of this universal journey.
Okay, so let's unpack this universal starting point then. What actually kicks off this fiery heart within us? What makes us restless? What compels us to start seeking something more? To feel that profound restlessness Augustine talked about until we find our true rest. It's more than just a bad mood, right? It feels fundamental.
You're absolutely right. It's fundamental. Many traditions, really regardless of their cultural background, they pinpoint a basic dissatisfaction with our ordinary state of being, a kind of inherent incompleteness, something that purely material existence just can't seem to fill. It's this deep feeling that there's something more, something essential missing, a sort of pervasive unease that then starts the search. This isn't just about fleeting unhappiness. It's a foundational disquiet that ignites that fiery heart.
And it sounds like a huge part of that unease comes from what we're carrying around inside, this weight of unprocessed experience, as the outline puts it. Our sources suggest our internal world can get pretty cluttered, almost blocked up over time. Can you maybe unpack that a bit? How does this internal baggage keep our hearts from finding peace?
Yes, it's a critical point. The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer really sheds light on this. He explains how our hearts can become, well, blocked over time by what he calls stored past impressions. And these aren't just vague memories floating around. They're emotional residues, leftovers from events we couldn't fully process when they happened. Maybe we were too young or overwhelmed or just didn't have the tools then to really integrate the experience. And what's crucial, absolutely crucial, is that this internal blockage isn't just sitting there doing nothing. It actively shapes your future reactions, thoughts, and preferences. It's almost like an old injury that keeps dictating how you move, how you interact with the present moment. And what often happens is when we resist the initial pain, maybe push it down, deny it, try to forget, we tend to build an entire protection structure around this inner closure. Instead of just letting the initial pain release, we build walls. Think of it like a fortress built around a tiny unaddressed hurt, which then ends up restricting our whole life. This creates this self-perpetuating cycle of resistance that ultimately prevents real freedom and keeps that restless heart aching.
Wow. So it's not just the original hurt, but our reaction to it, the building of the fortress that really locks in the restlessness. That's a powerful way to think about it. And Radical Acceptance by Tara Brojok. That seems to expand on this, maybe looking at this wanting self and how that keeps us feeling deprived or unworthy.
Exactly. Tara Brach's work complements Singer's beautifully. She describes what she calls a wanting self, a part of us that's really focused on just emotional survival and well-being, basic needs. Now, when our fundamental human needs for love, understanding, acceptance aren't met, especially early on, fear and shame tend to deepen inside us. And instead of just feeling those emotions and letting them move through, we often fall into these coping mechanisms, unhelpful ones usually. Brock highlights things like disconnecting from and numbing our body, trying to escape the discomfort by checking out, or getting lost in self-judgment and obsessive thinking, where our minds just spin and spin, criticizing ourselves, criticizing others, instead of facing the underlying pain. And all of these, unfortunately, they just perpetuate an identity as fundamentally deprived, isolated, and unworthy. This wanting self gets stuck in this loop, constantly seeking validation outside or trying to numb the pain inside. And this just keeps the fiery heart unsatisfied, restless. It's a cycle of inner suffering.
Okay, it's clear then. A lot of our initial suffering, this inner fiery heart, comes from our internal landscape, how we handle or fail to handle our experiences. But what about the external world itself? How do these traditions see the limitations of material existence as a source of this deep longing?
Well, many ancient texts are incredibly direct about it, almost stark sometimes. They talk about the fleeting nature of our physical existence, contrasting it with something deeper, more lasting. Take the Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's a foundational Hindu text, and it gives a really profound, maybe even startling view of our physical body. It uses this term, Saksid Ananta Vigraha, but that actually describes our spiritual body, our true eternal essence, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. Then it contrasts that sharply with our material body. It says the material body is a sat, temporary, impermanent. It's not sit, meaning it's full of ignorance, not real knowledge, prone to illusion. And it's Nirananda, fundamentally lacking bliss, inherently full of misery. So the Gita isn't just being philosophical here. It's saying, look, if you identify your deepest self with this limited, fleeting physical form, you are bound to suffer. Dissatisfaction is baked in. From that viewpoint, all suffering comes directly from mistaking this temporary vehicle for our true selves. It's a call to look beyond the physical.
So the body itself, just by its nature, temporary, ignorant, is a source of dissatisfaction. Wow. That really shifts where we should place our sense of identity. And the Dhammapada, the Buddhist scripture, seems to echo this powerfully, connecting our attachment to the physical world directly to suffering and this fiery heart feeling.
Absolutely. The Dhammapada drives this home. It urges us to know this body to be like foam and to awaken to its mirage nature. That's not just poetry, it's a direct instruction. See through the illusion of permanence, the illusion of solidity in the physical world. Foam vanishes, a mirage deceives. So does this body. And the text explicitly links suffering to the man with attached mind, insatiate in sensual pleasures, plucking only flowers. You get this image, right? Someone frantically grabbing at fleeting worldly delights, always needing more, never really satisfied. This clinging to the ephemeral, to transient pleasures, ultimately leads to being overpowered by the end maker, which means death. The insight here is that the longing, the fiery heart, isn't really for more temporary stuff, but for something that isn't foam, isn't a mirage. Something truly lasting, truly peaceful, beyond impermanence and craving.
That really deepens the sense of restlessness coming from material limits. But what about people who seem to live simply, maybe intentionally so, yet they still feel this longing? It seems like even in apparent simplicity, there's still this drive to seek beyond the mundane, a kind of whisper from that fiery heart saying, there's still more.
Yes, exactly. And we see this so clearly in Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. His early restlessness is almost tangible. Even when he's with the samanas, these incredibly disciplined ascetics, he feels like what he learned there. He could have learned more quickly and by simpler means in a tavern somewhere. Now, that's not him rejecting simplicity or discipline itself. It's a profound realization that external forms, even the most rigorous ones, can't ultimately quench that deep inner thirst for direct experience, for ultimate truth. And later, remember, after years of worldly success, wealth, pleasure, his high, bright state of being awake had slowly become a memory. His soul felt like it was grinding to a halt. It shows this deeper yearning that goes beyond both extreme asceticism and external success. It's a search for inner vitality, an authenticity you can't just find in outward circumstances or even knowledge alone.
And it's not just in big life narratives like Siddhartha's, right? Even in really mundane, everyday things, this deep seeking can be there, this refusal to just skim the surface of life.
Precisely. Think about Henry David Thoreau in Walden, living that radically simple life, right? He talks about hoeing his beans, but it became more than just farming. He famously said, "It was no longer beans that I hoed, nor I that hoed beans." Now, that's not just a nice phrase. It suggests this constant undercurrent of seeking a deeper connection, almost a mystical engagement with reality, even in the most ordinary task. Thoreau wasn't just growing food, he was cultivating a connection to existence itself. It's a refusal to settle for just the physical act, the superficial layer. It shows the fiery heart is always looking for a richer experience of being, no matter the external situation. The longing isn't always for something else, but for a deeper experience of what is. A shift in perception, not place.
Okay, so the discomfort is really clear now. We've mapped out these initial stirrings of the fiery heart, from internal blocks, unprocessed stuff, to the fleeting nature of physical life, and even that restlessness that pops up in simple lives. It's definitely not just a passing mood, it's this deep unease. But how do people move from just feeling that restlessness to actually, listening to its call,
Yeah.
to actively seeking transformation? What makes someone realize there's another way, that the answer isn't just more or different, but actually deeper?
That's the crucial turning point, isn't it? And this moment, it often involves a really profound shift in how we see ourselves. A realization that the self we usually identify with, this bundle of habits, memories, roles, might not be the whole story. It might not be our ultimate reality, and that there's a deeper truth waiting to be discovered. It's recognizing that the I we think we are isn't the whole of who we are. Something bigger is calling from within. This is often where that fiery heart starts to become a guide, not just an ache.
That's a huge internal shift. It sounds like a kind of transcendence of the ego, or the small self, is really core to this realization.
It absolutely is. Theologia Germanica, that amazing anonymous text of Christian mysticism, puts it very directly, very powerfully. It says, the more of self and me, the more of sin and wickedness. And the flip side, the more the self, the I, the me, the mine, that is self-seeking and selfishness abate in a man, the more doth God's I, that is God himself, increase in him. Now, this isn't about self-loathing. It's a radical call to diminish the ego, not to negate the self, but as a necessary step towards divine union, towards a greater reality. The small self, with its endless demands and focus on me, has to step aside so the larger divine self, the presence of God, can emerge and grow within us. It's a paradox, really. By letting go of our sense of individual importance, we connect to something infinitely bigger, infinitely more significant.
Right, getting out of our own way, basically, making space for something larger. And Sam Harris, in Waking Up, he seems to come at this from a more modern angle, maybe less theological, but he lands somewhere similar about the self being illusory.
Precisely. Sam Harris's work, which kind of bridges neuroscience and contemplative practice, it challenges the very foundation of that perceived self. He flat out posits that the conventional self is an illusion. He clarifies, from a scientific viewpoint, there is no place for a soul inside your head in the way we usually picture it, like some little person pulling levers. He points to neuroscience, things like split brain studies, suggesting that consciousness itself is divisible, which leads him to argue that the unified thinker of thoughts or experiencer of experience we assume we are is actually an illusion, a construct of the mind. And the powerful implication here is that self-transcendence is possible. And crucially, he says it's within our capacity. It's not some far-out mystical thing for only a few enlightened beings. It's a potential within all of us to see through the illusion of a separate, fixed self, and to realize a deeper, more open awareness that isn't confined by the ego's boundaries. It offers a path to liberation that's potentially accessible to anyone willing to look closely at their own consciousness.
That is genuinely mind-bending, the idea of the self as an illusion. Okay, so if that conventional self isn't real or isn't the whole picture, what is driving us then? It sounds like there's this inherent drive for meaning that goes deeper than ego, a core human need that the fiery heart is constantly trying to satisfy.
Absolutely. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, in Man's Search for Meaning, he identifies this desire of man to search for meaning as a primary human driver. He calls it the will to meaning, spirito, and he argues quite profoundly that the frustration or disturbance of this desire is a key cause of psychological distress. He even coined the term existential vacuum for that emptiness people feel when this innate need for meaning goes unmet. So this positions the search for meaning, this inherent fiery heart longing, as absolutely fundamental to our mental health, our well-being. It's not just a nice extra or some philosophical hobby. It's central to being human, central to our resilience. Frankl saw this directly in the concentration camps. Finding meaning was often the key to survival, even liberation.
So the search for meaning isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, deeply tied to our well-being. And for that search to really take off, it often requires a kind of departure, a leaving of the familiar, as Richard Rohr puts it, moving beyond the comfortable structures we built.
Richard Rohr, yeah. In Falling Upward, he emphasizes exactly that. He says, the very first sign of the potential hero's journey is that he or she must leave home the familiar.
Right.
No. And this isn't always, packing your bags. Often it means letting go of our particular tower of success and self-importance, or what he calls our personal salvation project. These are the identities, the achievements, even the religious frameworks often built in the first half of life that give us security but ultimately limit our spiritual growth. We have to recognize these as constructs we eventually need to move beyond for deeper spiritual development. It's a call to shed those external definitions of success and identity that, they might feel comforting for a while, but they ultimately box us in and stop us from truly hearing that inner call from the fiery heart.
That idea as an inner call really brings us to listening to the inner voice. This sounds like such a crucial step, maybe even indispensable, in realizing there is another way. Rather than just seeking endlessly outside or following set paths, it feels very personal.
It's possibly one of the most direct, most personal routes to transformation. Let's go back to Siddhartha for a moment, that pivotal moment after he hears the Buddha speak. He tells his friend Govinda, look, while you take refuge in the teachings in the community, my path is to experience his self directly, not to just capture it in the net of thought or rely only on external doctrines. Siddhartha realizes that even Gautama the Buddha's own enlightenment didn't come from following rules. It came from obeying a voice in his own heart. This just highlights the absolute importance of internal guidance, tuning into that fiery heart within and trusting its direction above all else. It's recognizing that real wisdom isn't just handed down, it's intimately experienced, realized through your own inner listening and exploration. That inner voice becomes the most reliable compass.
Okay, so we've got this new understanding of self, maybe less ego-driven, more attuned to purpose, guided by this inner voice. What practical steps, what spiritual disciplines do these different traditions offer for the actual journey of transformation? It's one thing to feel the longing, right, and understand the problem. But how do you actually do the work? How do you tend to that fiery heart to guide it towards peace, towards that rest Augustine spoke of?
Right, that's the crucial next phase, the how-to. And from ancient contemplative prayers to, modern mindfulness techniques, there are just countless technologies of the sacred, you could call them, methods designed specifically to reorient our consciousness, to foster that deeper connection. These are the tools, the practices that help us move from just understanding it intellectually to actually living it, experiencing it, to really address that restlessness. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're active engagements.
Let's start with something that seems fundamental across many traditions. The power of focused awareness in prayer. How do our sources show this as a practical way to quiet that restless heart?
The Way of a Pilgrim, that classic of Russian Orthodox spirituality, gives such a vivid, practical example. It emphasizes constant prayer, specifically the prayer of the heart, the Jesus prayer. This practice can become so deeply ingrained, the text says, it continues, even while they sleep. That shows a profound, continuous integration of the divine into one's whole being. The text quotes that biblical line, "Be still and know that I am God," pointing to the absolute necessity of intense attention for this kind of interior prayer. The pilgrim's practice involves actively guarding your mind against thoughts, stopping the mental chatter, combining sobriety with humility, and using the venerable and holy name of Jesus Christ as with a lantern to guide our way. It's not just repeating words, it's an active internal vigilance, a disciplined focusing of the mind and heart on the divine presence, which slowly, surely transforms the very fabric of consciousness.
That sounds like a really powerful way to cultivate stillness and focus that fiery heart. And it makes me think of Deepak Chopra, what he says about stillness and non-judgment, maybe in the context of manifesting desires. It feels like a more contemporary spin on a similar internal discipline.
It does resonate, yes. Deepak Chopra, in the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, he highlights stillness as the first requirement for manifesting your desires. And he says this stillness is reachable through practices like meditation. But he also introduces non-judgment as crucial. Why? Because it prevents turbulence in your internal dialogue. Internal turbulence, that's the constant stream of evaluating, comparing, criticizing that runs through our minds. He warns that this mental noise actually constricts the flow of energy between you and the field of pure potentiality. It effectively squeezes the gap between thoughts. And that gap, for Chopra, is our connection to pure awareness, the source of creativity, of real power. So for him, stillness and non-judgment aren't just about finding peace. They're fundamental practices for engaging with the creative force of the universe itself, letting our deepest intentions come through without being blocked by inner resistance.
So it's not just about emptying the mind, but consciously directing it, purifying it, aligning it with something higher, which leads us nicely into cultivating virtue and detachment as a practical discipline, a way to steer the fiery heart away from the things that bind it.
The Dhammapada offers a very clear Buddhist path here. It says, cultivate the bright, having come from familiar abode to no abode, which means purifying the defilements of the mind. This isn't about literal homelessness, but detaching from the home of our ego, our attachments, our fixed identities. The ultimate goal, nibbana nirvana, is reached by fully developing the factors of enlightenment, things like mindfulness, wisdom, joy, equanimity, and crucially, by delighting in the rejection of grasping and destroying the intoxicants. Now, intoxicants here aren't just booze or drugs, they're deep mental defilements. Sensual desire, the craving for continued existence, wrong views about reality, fundamental ignorance. It's a call to basically clean up our inner landscape, get rid of everything that clouds our perception and ties us to dissatisfaction. The text stresses this needs being watchful of speech, well restrained in mind. Inner purity and self-control are central. It's an active letting go.
That focus on detachment and virtue clearly spans different traditions. And the Bhagavad Gita, again, seems to emphasize a disciplined life too, but maybe centered more around devotion and action.
Exactly. The Bhagavad Gita describes consciousness as acting in the service of Kot with your whole being, body, mind, intelligence, and words. It's not about stopping action. It's about changing the intention behind the action. Instead of acting for personal gain or getting attached to results, you act as an offering to the divine. This devotional path, it leads to being a liberated person even within the material world. It fundamentally shifts your relationship to what you do and what happens because of it. A key result is becoming devoid of the false ego that leads one to believe that he is the body. By shifting the sense of who's doing this from the individual ego to the divine, you become free from the karmic consequences. Such devotion, transferring all agency to the divine, promises unadulterated peace. It's a powerful form of detachment that doesn't mean running away from the world, but changes how you live in it. The fiery heart finds purpose in selfless service.
These paths sound incredibly transformative, but also really challenging. It seems like a core part of this journey involves confronting internal obstacles directly. It's not always smooth sailing, is it?
No, definitely not. It's often quite demanding and involves periods of intense inner struggle, a real purification of that fiery heart. St. John of the Cross, the Spanish mystic, in Dark Night of the Soul, he described the stern and severe purgation of the spirit. This isn't about wearing a hair shirt. It's an internal stripping away. Both the spiritual and sensual parts of the soul get purged. This purgation of sense, he calls it, is a correction and restraint of the desire. It prepares the soul for a deeper union with God. It's basically God working directly on the soul to remove its flaws, its attachments to created things, even good things that get in the way of true union. It's presented as difficult, yes, but absolutely necessary. Stripping away false comforts, attachments that block real spiritual growth. It's like an inner fire purifying the heart, burning away everything that isn't ultimately divine.
So it's not just adding good habits, but actively removing deeply rooted patterns and desires, and that can be painful. And St. Teresa of Avila, his contemporary, also a Spanish mystic, she talks about the great distress that comes with this, doesn't she, in her interior castle?
Yes, St. Teresa, in that beautiful allegory of the soul as an interior castle with many rooms leading to the center, she speaks very vividly about the soul's great distress during this purification. As the soul learns more about the greatness of her God, its desire for God just grows and grows exponentially. But the perceived distance from fully enjoying God, the awareness of its own flaws, the remaining attachments, this causes fresh pain. It's not a punishment, though. It's a pain born of intense love and longing. This impetuous, her word, desire to enjoy God just gets stronger as love increases. It's a beautiful paradox, really. The closer you get, the more intense the longing becomes and the more painful the sense of separation feels, which then pushes the soul even further along the path. That fiery heart just burns hotter, making the current state unbearable until full union is reached.
That's such a powerful dynamic, that desire and longing intensifying. Now, beyond our own efforts and inner struggles, the environment around us, maybe guidance from a teacher, that seems to play a big role too. Which brings us to the role of mentorship and environment.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Paramahansa Yogananda, in his autobiography of a yogi, he talks about his early resistance to his own guru, Sri Yukteswar. He says, very honestly, my young heart was not yet malleable to the transforming fingers of my guru. This highlights two things, really. One, the immense transformative power of a spiritual guide, a guru whose presence, whose teachings can literally reshape your consciousness. And two, it acknowledges that very common initial struggle against surrendering to that guidance. The ego often fights the very thing that could lead to its transcendence, right? It clings to its old ways, its sense of autonomy. A real guru isn't just teaching concepts. They're a living example of the path. Their spiritual energy can speed up your own journey, often through difficult but necessary inner work.
So a guru isn't just a teacher, but a catalyst, even when we push back. And Siddhartha gives us another great example of mentorship, one that weaves in the natural world as a teacher too, alongside a human guide.
Absolutely. Siddhartha's time with Vasudeva, the unassuming ferryman, illustrates this perfectly. Vasudeva, though outwardly simple, becomes this profound spiritual mentor. It's through Vasudeva's quiet, attentive presence and his wisdom that Siddhartha finally learns how to truly listen to the river. The river itself becomes this incredible teacher, speaking in 100 voices, 1,000 voices, showing him it is good to strive downwards, to sink, to seek depth. This isn't just about being humble, it's about letting go of intellectual pride, that constant upward push of the ego. And this deep listening, this surrender, leads to a radical outward change. The rich and elegant Siddhartha willingly becomes an oarsman's servant. The learned Brahmin Siddhartha becomes a simple ferryman. That huge shift in status perfectly mirrors an inner detachment from worldly identity and a deepening into humility, presence, and just this profound connection to the wisdom of nature. Here, the environment, guided by a mentor, really becomes a living scripture for the fiery heart.
Wow. This has been an amazing journey, tracing the roots of restlessness and the disciplines needed to transform. So as people commit to these intense practices, confront their inner obstacles, what's the culmination? How do these traditions describe that ultimate experience of connection, liberation? It sounds like it goes beyond just personal peace into something universally connected.
Yes, across the board you find this recurring theme of profound unity, an experience that completely transcends the individual ego and reveals a deeper universal reality. It's the ultimate answer to that restlessness Augustine felt, the fiery heart finally finding its true rest in this vast, all-encompassing embrace. And this isn't just presented as a nice philosophical idea, it's described as a direct, lived, experienced reality.
And a core part of that ultimate unity seems to be the dissolution of the separate self, letting go of that individual I we've been talking about. What do the sources say about losing that sense of ego in this profound state?
William James, in The Varieties of Religious Experience, gives a classic account of this, looking at it psychologically and philosophically. He describes a state where the will to assert ourselves and hold our own has been displaced by a willingness to close our mouths and be as nothing in the floods and waterspouts of God. Now, that sounds maybe negative, be as nothing, but it's not about annihilation. It actually brings about a happy relaxation of calm, deep breathing of an eternal present, a state where fear is not held in abeyance. It is positively expunged and washed away. Individuals experience a new inward apprehension or view of God. It's this radical surrender that, paradoxically, leads to profound freedom, a complete release from anxiety, and a direct, unmediated experience of the divine. The personal ego just recedes, and this universal connection takes over.
That sense of surrender, being as nothing, sounds like a direct right to a much larger reality, freedom from fear. And Conversations with God, that modern text, offers an even more direct, almost literal take on this unity, doesn't it? Emphasizing absolute oneness.
Oh, absolutely. Conversations with God just states it plainly. We are all one. There is only one of us. You are not separate from me, and you are not separate from each other. And it stresses, this isn't a metaphor, not just poetry. It's presented as a statement of fact about how reality is. It explains that consciousness is a marvelous thing. It can be divided into 1,000 pieces, allowing divinity to experience itself through all these countless individual perspectives. Think of one ocean forming countless waves, each wave unique, but all fundamentally the ocean. So dissolving the separate self in this view isn't losing your identity, it's recognizing your inherent indivisible unity with everything. The fiery heart expands to embrace the whole cosmos, seeing itself in everything.
And Theologia Germanica seems to back this up, this idea of a universal good that's beyond any individual identity, pointing to an absolute oneness as the source of all love.
It does, and in such a profound way, says God loveth not himself as himself. For if there were aught better than God, God would love that and not himself. It's a subtle theological point, suggesting God's love isn't self-centered. It's directed towards the ultimate good, which is God. This points to the absolute nature of the one who is neither I nor thou, this nor that, but is above all I and thou, this and that, and in him all goodness is loved as one good. It's saying the ultimate reality, the perfect good, is beyond labels like self or other. It's a unified field of pure goodness, pure love. All individual expressions of love merge into the single, all-encompassing divine love, again, dissolving the separate ego into a greater unified identity, a cosmic fiery heart.
So it's not just letting go of the ego, but realizing the divine isn't just out there, but also deeply within and without us.
pervading everything. That sounds like a total reframing of existence.
It is a total reframing, and it's a core idea in what Aldous Huxley called the perennial philosophy, that common truth he saw underlying all major spiritual traditions. He talks about the logos. You can think of it as a universal divine principle, cosmic reason, or intelligence. He says it passes out of eternity into time for no other purpose than to assist the beings to pass out of time into eternity. Basically, the divine shows up in our world to help guide us back to the eternal source. Huxley notes that, in Buddhism, for example, Mahayana expresses the universal, whereas Hinayana cannot set itself free from the domination of historical fact. He means Mahayana focuses on the big picture, universal truths, interconnectedness, while Hinayana, or Theravada, puts more emphasis on the historical Buddha and specific individual practices. Huxley's point is that true spiritual reality goes beyond specific historical events or physical forms. It points to union with immanent and transcendent spirit, meaning the divine is right here within us, immanent and beyond us, encompassing everything transcendent. It's not confined. The fiery heart is connected to the very core of creation.
That idea of immanent and transcendent spirit, that's echoed in incredibly ancient texts too, isn't it? The Upanishads from Hinduism, they seem to say this with amazing clarity, seeing the divine self in everything.
Oh yes, the Upanishads are foundational here. They describe the Atman, the individual soul, the true self, as free from evil, ageless, deathless, without hunger or thirst, of true resolve, of true desire. They call it the Supreme Lord. It's not just part of God, it is the divine essence within. And then critically, these ancient texts state things like, the one who is in fire, the one who is in the heart, and the one who is in the sun are one. That powerful poetic line just illustrates the pervasive, unified nature of this divine self. It's simultaneously within each person, in the heart, present in the natural world, in fire, and woven into the cosmic order in the sun. It's a profound realization of interconnectedness that just dissolves any sense of separation between your inner divine self and the outer universe. The fiery heart realizes its own divinity and its oneness with all that is.
So this experience of oneness dissolves the separate self, reveals the divine everywhere. How does this lead to a harmony of all experience, even the stuff that seems contradictory, like joy and suffering? It's one thing to get it intellectually.
Right, but to experience it, Siddhartha gives us such a beautiful picture of this culmination. At the height of his journey, after everything he's been through, Siddhartha sits by the river and just listens. Really listens. He hears 100 voices, 1,000 voices. And crucially, these include joy and of suffering, good and bad voices, laughing and sad ones. He doesn't separate them anymore. They're all part of the river's song, life's song. He sees the river as being made up of him and his loved ones and of all people. He realizes all experiences, all beings are flowing together towards goals, and every goal was followed by a new one. This signifies this profound integration of everything life, death, joy, suffering into one harmonious, unified flow. The river, always changing yet always itself, becomes this metaphor for universal consciousness where everything is connected, everything has purpose. This leads to this state of deep acceptance, deep peace, where the individual fiery heart finally finds its ultimate rest and identity within that grand eternal flow, embracing all the contradictions as part of perfect whole.
These sound like incredibly profound internal experiences. The heart finding its ultimate rest, as Augustine said. But how does this transformation actually show up in daily life, in our relationships, how we engage with the world? It can't just be an inner feeling, can it? It must ripple outwards.
You're absolutely right. The real litmus test of spiritual realization isn't just inner bliss. It's how it informs your actions, your presence in the world. This profound inner shift, it almost invariably leads to a life marked by deep peace, a kind of radical selflessness, and a profound active love for all beings. It reflects the unity you've discovered within. The fiery heart, once restless, now beats in sync with the world, seeking to uplift, to serve.
So one of the main outward signs, then, is this deep sense of peace and freedom from attachment. How do the sources describe that as a lived reality, day to day?
The Bhagavad Gita explains this beautifully. It says a person in consciousness achieves unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to the divine. This person is certainly a liberated person with no anxiety over the results of his work. Why? Because in Kanti consciousness, there is no duality. There's no separation between my work and God's will. Everything that exists is seen as a product of Kancha's energy, and Kanta is all good. This complete surrender of agency, this understanding of ultimate unity, it frees you from the anxieties of success or failure. It fosters this unshakable inner peace. The fiery heart isn't driven by personal ambition anymore. It rests in divine intention, finding peace regardless of the outcome.
That's a powerful source of peace, non-duality, surrendering results.
Yeah.
And the fifth agreement, that seems to describe a similar freedom from anxiety, but more in how we interact with other people, especially their opinions, their projections, not taking things personally.
Exactly. The fifth agreement describes a seer as someone who gets it. They understand that other people project what they believe on you, and crucially, what they project is what they believe about themselves. That's such a key insight. When someone judges you or criticizes you or even praises you, often they're just reflecting their own inner world, their beliefs, their needs. Once you grasp this, you don't take it personally because you don't make the assumption that what they are projecting is true about you. This understanding brings incredible freedom. Freedom from getting tangled up in other people's illusions. It lets you keep your inner peace, your emotional balance, no matter what judgments are flying around. It's a practical application of seeing the illusory nature of the separate self, both in you and in others, and the projections that come from that. It lets the fiery heart stay calm amidst the world's drama.
Okay, so once that inner peace, that freedom from attachment takes root, it naturally seems to flow into love, virtue, and compassion in action. How is this described as the real embodiment of transformation?
This is where the rubber meets the road, spiritually speaking, where realization touches the world. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, the Stoic, in the Meditations, he pushes for living each moment as if it were your last. Without temerity or any passionate aversion to what reason approves, without hypocrisy or selfishness or fretting at what providence appoints. He says true virtue means acting without aiming at glory or any selfish advantage or pleasure, but from love to God and moral goodness. This is about living an ethical life from the inside out, driven by a higher purpose, a deep love for the divine that shows up as moral integrity and selfless action, even when things are tough. The fiery heart expresses itself as unwavering goodness.
That focus on love for God showing up as moral goodness that echoes across traditions. And the Philokalia, that amazing collection from the Eastern Orthodox tradition, it takes us even further, doesn't it? Directly linking love for God with love for others.
Yes, the Philokalia is incredibly direct. It states, if God is love, he who has love has God within himself. If love is absent, nothing is of the least profit to us. That's radical. Love is the essence of the divine. Having it within you is the measure of your spiritual state. And it goes further. Unless we love others, we cannot say that we love God. It even quotes St. John, if a man says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. It stresses that love for God isn't just some abstract feeling or private mystical thing. It's proven, demonstrated concretely through genuine love and compassion for fellow human beings. It argues that love unites and protects the virtues, acting as the glue holding all good actions together. It's the fuel for the transformed fiery heart.
That's a profound call to action. Embody love, make it the foundation. And Pema Chodron, the contemporary Buddhist nun, in this thing, when things fall apart, she brings this right into creating, an enlightened society, starting with ourselves.
Pema Chodron highlights that not harming ourselves or others in the beginning, not harming ourselves or others in the middle, and not harming ourselves or others in the end is the basis of enlightened society. This isn't just wishful thinking. She says it begins with sane citizens, and that requires mindfulness, a sense of clear seeing with respect and compassion for what it is we see. And importantly, extending that compassion even towards the parts of ourselves that we feel are not worthy of existing. She emphasizes that outward love and non-harming start with inner self-acceptance, inner awareness. When we can hold our own difficult stuff, our own flaws with compassion, we naturally offer that same quality to others. That leads to a truly compassionate presence in the world, radiating from a healed, fiery heart.
And Lao Tzu, way back in the ancient Tao Te Ching, offers a similar view on real virtue, linking it to giving without expecting anything back, flowing with nature itself.
Lao Tzu describes true virtue not as striving for reward, but as the way of one who gives and wants nothing in return. He contrasts this with the person who lacks true virtue always seeks a way to get, concluding, to the giver comes the fullness of life, to the taker just an empty hand. This isn't just moral advice. He's describing how the universe works, the Tao. The Tao of heaven has no favorites. It always sides with one who has a pure heart. It highlights that selfless giving without getting hung up on outcomes or getting paid back isn't just good. It aligns you with the flow of the universe, with the Tao itself. It leads to an abundance, a fullness of life that takers just can't access. The fiery heart that gives freely is perpetually refilled by the cosmic flow.
That profound embodiment of love and virtue leads right into an exemplary life, often one of dedicated discipleship, where your whole being becomes a testament to the transformation.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who resisted the Nazis in The Cost of Discipleship, gives us such a powerful modern example. His life is shown as an example of costly grace. Not cheap grace that demands nothing, but the privilege of taking the cross for others and of affirming his faith by martyrdom. The text defines the righteousness of the disciples not as personal achievement, not a checklist of good deeds, but as a perfect and truly personal communion with God. And this righteousness, crucially, consists precisely in their following him, following Christ. Bonhoeffer's life embodies this principle. True spiritual transformation culminates in a selfless, courageous, deeply committed life of service, even if it costs everything. It mirrors the divine example. It's not just about what you do, ultimately, but who you become in relationship with the divine, letting that fiery heart shine as a light for others.
What an absolutely incredible journey through these sources, from those first stirrings of restlessness, that human unease, through all these very disciplines and inner shifts, to the profound experience of oneness and seeing it lived out in selfless love and action. It's just so clear that the fiery heart beats with this universal rhythm. That cry from St. Augustine, "Our heart is restless until it rests in you," it really does set the stage perfectly for this perennial human quest found everywhere we look today.
Indeed. We've really seen that while the language, the cultural details, the specific practices, they differ enormously, right? But the underlying human experience, that spiritual longing, the call to move beyond the ego, the path towards a more integrated, compassionate way of being, it's remarkably consistent. These aren't just dusty old texts or abstract ideas. They offer living maps, practical guides for our own journey toward understanding ourselves, our place in the cosmos better. Profound guidance for anyone feeling that inner restlessness and yearning for deeper connection.
So thinking about this universal drive for inner transformation and this shared realization of fundamental oneness we found in all these diverse texts, here's a thought to leave you with. What if this individual journey isn't just for personal peace? What if it's actually for collective evolution? If we are all one, as one source put it so plainly, and maybe lack of love really is humanity's core problem, could a widespread embrace of these principles, connection, selflessness, compassion, could that be the ultimate catalyst? Could it help create that new world political community or that enlightened society that truly serves everyone? Think about it. Maybe the change we want to see in the world really does begin by listening to the deepest longings of our own fiery hearts and then having the courage to live from that place of profound unity.